Hey, what's up, Zwifters? Welcome back to No Breakaways, your source for all the Zwift racing tips and tricks. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody who commented on last week's video. I really appreciated all the feedback, and I heard you loud and clear. Put the times back in, give me some feature distances. I definitely am doing that this week. I'm trying to add a couple things where I'm breaking out the sections at the bottom here in the little time bar so that you should be able to see where everything is. So I'm hoping, while I want you to watch the whole video and it helps out the channel, if you want to skip around to the parts that are really interesting to you, go for it. I want to make this as good as user experience as possible for you out there. All right, week 3, we got the New York KOM After Party. So the Beach Island Loop was very difficult. I don't know if it was for you, but it was just basically full gas from the gun. I expect this to be very similar. I think this is going to be a super hard week. Big shout out to Ian Mulligan from the Freds team for racing this course for me. I didn't have time to do it this week. He stepped in. I really appreciate it. And he also gave us some really good recon. So if you see Ian out there anywhere, give him a thumbs up. He really helped out this week. And, you know, he's a very high level racer, so it's cool to get these tips from him. Let's jump right in. Here's the course for the week to New York City KOM After Party. We have one lap of this course, 37.1 kilometers, 442 meters of elevation gain. That one lap is a bit deceptive. It's really 3 laps of the Gotham grind reversed, followed by going up onto the glass and up the New York forward KOM. This is going to be a very tough course. Not many people are going to make it to the finish. There's going to be groups all over the road. It should be really interesting racing, but you know, maybe more interesting to watch at times, depending on how good a shape you're in. Intermediate points, just like normal. 10 for first place for the first across the line. As a reminder, that's the person who goes across the line first. And we have 20 points for first for the fastest through segment. That's whoever goes through it fastest, independent of your placing through there. As you can see, the points are a little bit higher for fastest through, but we're going to break down a little bit more about that on this next slide. So when we do look at the intermediate points on the first across the line, we have the New York Sprint 3 times. That's that Gotham grind reverse. And the New York KOM once. That's the finish of the race. So that's also an intermediate point where you get first across the line and fastest through segment bonuses. There are a total, if you add up all the points from all the sprints, of 220 available points for the first across the line. For the fastest through segment, we have the New York Sprint and the New York KOM. So there is 146 available total points from those. Whoever goes through the sprint the fastest, and then whoever gets up that KOM the fastest. So that'll be really interesting because the winner of this race is going to get 40 points for the KOM for winning the race. They're going to get 10 points for the first across the line, and most likely they'll get the 20 points from the fastest through segment, putting them at a total of 70 points for winning the race. So there's a huge premium on winning this race. So you're going to want to designate different people for sprints and for the finish. This isn't one like last week where you could survive, where you could do the sprints and survive through to the finish and maybe place well, like I know a lot of people did. This is something where probably if you go for the sprint, because that KOM is going to be so hard, it's going to be an all-out 2 or 3 to 5 or 6 minute effort that you're going to have designated climbers just for that finish. The power-ups this week, we have the Aero helmet, the feather, and the burrito. My hot take for the week, I like the burrito. It's just me. I kind of like messing with other people. You know, the Aero, that's going to be on the sprint. There is a possibility to use it on the climb, maybe in the flat part before the little ramp up that we'll be talking about, but realistically, you're going to want the feather power up for the climb, and we'll talk about a little bit where to use that. The burrito power up is an interesting one. I would use it in a place where you want to maybe make some separation, maybe on a flat before a climb, or you know, if you're in a reduced group going up like into the glass part and you want to try to make a little breakaway. All right, here we go. Thanks again to my buddy Ian for racing this. Really appreciate it. This was a very small race, so it's not starting out near as hard as our ZRL races are going to start out. And as these guys got chatting a little bit later on, they're all just kind of doing course recon anyways. So it wasn't really like an all-out race effort, although they were all nice enough to sprint the second lap. So you see, you come out of the pens, you take this left. It is pretty flat here, but we're gonna, of course, like we like we always do in New York, you hit a lot of bumps. We are gonna stop and cover a couple of those bumps, and we're gonna specifically go a little bit in depth on the sprint point. All right, here we go. Coming up on the sprint point, we go past that little turnoff on the right, and then you take this right here, and then you'll be able to see the sprint banner coming up. So if you're going through the fastest through, you're going to want to, probably launch pretty close to that right-hand corner. That'll give you maybe a 30-second, 25-second pull to this. And you can see a really interesting feature about this sprint point. It's -2 gradient right here. But then as you get close to the banner, it flattens out and then it kicks up to an incline. And this is an especially important feature. And thank you to Ian for pointing that out. You see we're at 4 or 5% gradient. You can't stop at the sprint banner. You have to push up this. And if you're a team who maybe didn't try to contest the sprint banner, but you hung with the pack and you want to counterattack, counterattacking over the top of this hill and then pushing it on the downhill over the top could be a very, very effective tactic to break up this race and potentially split the race up. This is the first split point in the race, and I think every single lap, the race is going to fall to pieces here because I know there are going to be people that can push really hard up over that hill. And I'm guessing by the end of the third lap, you're going to have a bunch of scattered groups all over the course, even before you get to that KOM. You're probably going to be down to the last 10 or 15 people going up the KOM well before you get to that point. So this is a very attackable course. Very, very attackable. So think about your team tactics and what you want to do. Okay, you can see we're coming up to the start-finish banner right up here. It does kick up to about a 4% gradient. Another really good place to attack. It's not that long after the sprint, only a couple kilometers. And so this is another spot where you could really smash this race apart. And it'll be interesting to see what teams do. If you didn't contest the sprint and you didn't decide to attack, counterattack over the top of that sprint point, you kept your team together and you wanted to try a team attack, this might be a really cool place to do it because everyone will be out of their power-ups, most likely from trying it at the sprint point. Here we are, 31.2 kilometers, starting the pitch up to the glass portion. This lasts to about 32.4 kilometers, so like a 1.2 kilometer climb right here. It's not like the KOM where it gets super duper steep, but you're going to see 6 or 7% gradient. I don't want to walk you through the whole thing, but just be ready for this portion of the course at about 31.1, 31.2 kilometers. All right, so we're coming up on another little feature. It kicks up to 11% gradient here at about 33.3 kilometers. Just be aware that this is coming. Be aware that this glass part, you need to be very on your game. And making sure you're responding to moves for on stuff like this. Here we go. This is the left-hand turn before the start of the KOM. As soon as you make this left-hand turn, you will be able to see the start of the climb right there in front of us, right at the base of this hill. There are huge gradients on here, 16, 17%. I don't know that I want to talk you up to 3.5 minutes of it, but what we'll do is we'll fast forward to a couple what I think are going to be really crucial points. Obviously, the whole thing is crucial, but like you see, anytime it's 4% or under, you can probably get a little bit of a draft. So let's jump to the next super important part on this KOM. All right, so you saw us just coming off a flat portion. You have to be drafting on that. You want to make sure you're in a pack. now we're going up to these super high gradients, 16, 15%. This is where the race is going to smash apart. I mean, the lower parts, it'll start to some degree, but right here is where you're really going to have to dig down and fight for the rest of this hill. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the end so that you can see the rest of the hill, but without my commentary. All right, here we are, the final part of the climb. If you saved an arrow power up, you want to save it right to the top. I would have, where you use your feather is really dependent on your competition. If you can hold it to the top and use it on this part, it might be a nice little way to attack. Otherwise, I'll probably use it right away on 17%. If you're going to drop an arrow, you drop it right there, right when you come over the top and start your sprint, come through and hopefully win the race. Here's the end of the race. The New York City Forward KOM, 1.4 kilometers long, average 6.4% grade, but there are some really, really steep parts on here and some really flat parts. So it's kind of an interesting climb, and really the climb is going to be at the end of a lot of ups and downs on the glass section that we just went through. So this is going to be really interesting. Hopefully you've saved your climbing legs for this and you're able to get up it okay. This is a place for sure for the climbers at the end of the race. So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. Looking at the expected times, what I did is I went back to the Everything Bagel course and I subtracted a little bit off that from season 1 of the ZRL for everyone. So for the women, I expect the Cat A women to get up 330 to 345 and about 5.5 watts per kg. I do feel pretty good about that estimate. There were some really high-level Premier League racers that were right at that 330 time, but they weren't finishing the race there. So I do think this is a pretty good estimate. For Cat B, probably 410 to 430 at 4.8 watts per kilogram. Cat C, 440 to 5 minutes. And Cat D, 530 to 550 at around 3.2 watts per kilogram. For some of the women, the Cat B and Cat D, I had to take a little bit more of a guess because I couldn't find any good results from this climb for those categories. So I had to kind of interpolate. For the men, what I'm expecting, Cat A 250 to 305 at 7 watts per kilogram. I had to double check that. Because of the end of the race, this is going to be super fast. I wouldn't be surprised if some people went a little faster than that. But realistically, that's probably what you're going to see at the top end of these Cat A races. Cat B 320 to 335. Cat C 405 to 415. And Cat D 520 to 540. I was able to tighten up the men's times just a little bit more because, like I said, there were actual times for all these, whereas the women, I couldn't find anything from last season. Total expected times for this course. For the Cat A women, I'm thinking 52 to 54 minutes at around 4.5 watts per kg. Cat B, 57 to 60. Cat C, 63 to 68. And Cat D, 68 to 73. I could not find really good data for women's only races on this, and I know that, especially with some of the changes, higher raw watts are rewarded. So these are guesses. I wouldn't be surprised to see them go a minute faster. I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe some on the slower end of this, but be prepared to, as many people put it in the comments for last video, suffer about this long. For the men, Cat A, probably 43:30 to 51 minutes, again at 4.5 watts per kg. Cat B, 53 to 54 minutes. Cat C, 57 to 59. And Cat D, 64 to 68 minutes at 2.3 watts per kg. All right, here are the featured distances. We have that New York City Sprint 3 times at 7.6, 17, and 26.3 kilometers. And we have the New York City KOM at 35.8. There are, like we talked about, just a ton of other features on this course. There are just too many to name. It's just up and down the whole way. You are going to want to note from the video we just did where some of the features, especially on the glass, are, because those pitch pretty steeply uphill. you're going to have to be careful again on that sprint. I can't emphasize it enough that you're going to have to go through the sprint and up the rest of that hill if you want to make sure you hang on to that pack. All right, I want to take a second to talk about bike choice. I forgot to ask Eric over at Zwift Insider about it. I know in his write-ups every week, he has a lot of good information in there. My number one choice is the Tron bike. It has the best blend of flat and climbing for this, and really it is truly excellent at both. You know, you don't have like the tarmac with the lightweights or anything like that, but we aren't climbing the Alp here. You know, we're talking a 3 to 6 minute climb. So it's not like it's anything crazy where you're going to shave off 40 seconds. At the same time, you know, if you want to be able to hang in for those sprints. And so I would just, if you have the Tron, go with the Tron. I was thinking you could use like the Vengeance Works and the disc for the sprint points. But kind of looking at the charts, maybe you save 0.1, 0.2 seconds on the sprint, maybe. But I would still stick with the Tron just because it's going to make the rest of the course quite a bit easier. And I would bet that you gain back that 0.1 or 0.2 in the less watts that you have to put out around the rest of the course. And it's also going to allow you to hopefully not lose a couple places on the finishing climb, which you'll get those points back anyways. So that's the main one I would use if you have it. Otherwise, I would go with the Canyon Aero 2021 with the NV 7.8s, the 3.4s, or the DT Swiss. I think those are your best options for this week. We don't need to get too crazy with it with everything, you know, looking at every single bike and wheel choice, but those are, I think, your best two for this week. All right, Swifters, that's the show. Good luck this week. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Remember to click like and subscribe. It helps me out. It helps out the channel, and we'll see you next time.